Okay, hello, welcome to another walkthrough. Today, this is actually a first for me because I'm doing a walkthrough on a case that is actually technically still live, although by the time this is published, it will have closed. And the only reason I'm able to do this is because for the first time, I managed to complete a case within the time frame, which is must be, I think I was counting the other, it's my 16th time doing a live case that's kind of proper part of a proper competition, so 16th time lucky. So today's case called Jet Soccer, I presume inspired by the recent World Cup as a kind of ideas for some cases. And we're just given two data sets. So we've got a set of scores of games between two different teams and a score in a fictional game called Soccer. We've got rosters, which is basically information about all the players in the teams and various characteristics, and that's what we're given. And I've done the pre-prep, so as I've been doing with my more recent versions of this, I've done the pre-prep so that this is quite nice and quick and efficient and so on. So yes, I will say a little bit about how I got on as I go through. Most what I'm going to show you is pretty close to what I did in the live case. There's a couple of things I've realised I could have done better or would do differently if I was trying it now. But as I said, yeah, that's more than enough introduction. We're already at 1 minute 20. Let's get going. So question one, the scores tab contains the results of all the games. For level one, we provided the goals for the team. So we've got a team, 10 rounds of goals, and how many goals are there. And we can do this actually in one whole formula. If we do it by row, well, normally we just do some of these, but actually we can even save ourselves time. If we were doing this, we could say by row on that array sum, and we get all of the rows. So level 2, the rosters contains a list of 23 players for each of the 26 teams, 598 in total. They've got a rating according to a 100-point scale, and we're given a player and a skill, and we have to look it up. And I was going to try my table lookup kind of lambda, but because the name is not the first column, that wouldn't have worked. So I'm going to have to do a good old-fashioned index match. But before I do that, I'm going to turn this into a table. We'll call this P for players, and we'll go back to the case, and we're going to do an index match. I've got a custom lambda. It doesn't really save me that much time, but I just like using. So I'm going to look at my items are the names. My column headings are these. My values are therefore the values in those columns. And then what I'm looking up is the player and the skill. And we can fill that down. And that gives me all of level 2. Right, level 3, we're going to go into data tables just mainly for visualization, but also because it's how I tend to solve it. So we're going to be given a bunch of scores, 5 scores, 100 points for a win, 50 points for a draw, none for a loss, but we still get 1 point for our goals scored even if we lose. So I'm just going to 2-col the teams, and we know it was a fixed amount. They were always going to give us 5. So we then need to find the team score. So that's going to be the text before on this array, text before the normal colon, and as it's text tool we need to multiply by 1 to return it to a number. We'll do text after on the same range using the colon times 1 to get our opposition, and then we're going to do the score for the right. So we're just going to say we can do this as a dynamic array, even though we don't really need to. We're going to map over these two things. Lambda, we'll call the first one A, second one B, and we're going to say if A is greater than B, then we've won and we get 100 points. If A equals B, then we get 50 points. Otherwise, we must have lost, so we get no points. We close those all off, we get our scores, and then our final score is basically the sum of our result scores, the hundreds and fifties, and the goals we scored, which is in that first column. So in that first one, we get 349, which matches our example. And we go back to the case. Level 3, we've got all ticks, so let's go on to level 4. Level 4, we are going to be finding out the value of players based on their key skills and their skill score. So this information is needed for a lookup. We'll go to level 4, so we need to start by finding out the player's position. So we can just use an XLOOKUP on B1 in the players table based on the name, and returning on the position. And so this person is a goalie, and that should be up there. And then we need to know what their key skill is. So we XLOOKUP the position in this table over here. I'll lock that in, even though I'm not going to be dragging anything, so I don't need to do that. But it's a fairly good habit to get into. So goalkeeping, not surprising, their key skill is goalkeeping. So then we need to look up their scores for all of the skills. So I'm just going to grab the headers from the rosters table. So just copy these just so we can see what we're doing. Okay, and so we're then going to X look up the player. So that's the value in B1 in our player name range. But then we want to get everything from the player goalkeeping score, escape, goalkeeping score through to the stamina score, which is the last one. So we get all the values, and then we're going to decide whether to multiply it by 10,000 or 100,000. So we're going to say if, let's do a quick, let's go, that's not a dynamic range. So we're going to say that equals, so does the header equal the key skill? If it does, we're going to say if that's true, then we're going to say the multiplier is 100,000, otherwise it's 10,000. So we get 100,000 for the goalkeeping and 10,000 for the others, and then we can just multiply that by the score. So we get the actual values, and then we're also told that if they have a value of these equaling 100, then we add in another, we added 10 million, I think it is. So we're going to say equals that equals 100. And again, we're going to say, we're going to wrap that in brackets and say multiply by 10 million, which is that much. And then we're just going to sum those two arrays together. And in this case, we get 20,960,000. And that should multiply through for the others. We'll just double check on the case. Yes, we're okay. Let's go on to level 5, which is saying wrong there because we haven't done our data table. So how many goals has each of the given teams scored over the course of the tournament? And this is where we need to go to our scores. So I'm just going to convert that to a table, and we'll call it S for scores. Go back to level 5. And so we need to get all the results for Jetlandia. So we're going to filter the scores table where we need to get where either team 1 or team 2 is Jetlandia because it switches. So we're going to put in brackets. So S team 1 equals B1 plus, which is our kind of OR operator when we're working inside the function, the filter function, or team 2 equals B1. That's going to give us all the games, but we don't need any of those first 3 columns. So we're just going to say take from this the last 3 columns. So we have the team, the away team, and the score, and obviously Jetlandia could be one of the 2 teams. So let's get our actual scores as before. So the text before of this based on the colon, and because we knew, I can't remember if it told us, but we could tell, or maybe we couldn't tell, maybe it's just lucky, but we know that the number of games is the same for every team, so this doesn't really need to be dynamic. So I'm going to text after on this reference based on the colon, again times 1, that's our score. And then we need to know which of these scores is our team. So what we're going to say is we're going to say X lookup B1, so Jetlandia in this range, and return from this range, and that will give us the score that applies to the team if I locked B1 as a reference and fill that down. So for these games where we're at home, it's these scores here, but as soon as we go away, it's then these second scores. And then we can just sum all of our scores. Oh, again, that's not dynamic, doesn't need to be because question numbers were the same each time. There we go, so that's 291. Case level 5 done. We're just coming up to 9 minutes. We're on good on time. Level 6. So this time in level 3, you learned how to calculate the tournament points. That's 150s and scores. And now we're going to do it for the whole tournament for each one team at a time. So we'll go to level 6. So we're going to start with some of the same work as before. I might in fact just grab those first 5 columns. I think the first 5 columns will be enough. So we grab the scores, and then we need to know which team. Are we team 1 or are we team 2 in order to be able to work out which is our score and which is the opposition score. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an X lookup. Again, we're going to look up B1. We'll lock it this time on this range, and we'll return from this range up here, but we'll lock that. So we're basically working out, are we team 1 or are we team 2 each time. So when we're team 2, we're the away team. Now we can do another conditional. So if this equals 1, that means we take the first score, otherwise we take the other score. And we'll do the same here for opposition. If this equals 1, then the opposition is the second team and that is the home team. That's correct. So in this first one, yep, we're 20 and 10. And now we can then apply our score logic. So we'll map over this array and this array. And we'll go lambda A, B. If A is greater than B, 100. If A equals B, then 50, otherwise 0. Close off our brackets, and then our score is going to be the points plus how many goals we scored, and then our sum is just going to sum those last two arrays, which in this case gives us 2391, and I've done something wrong, so let's just have a look. It's not that. Just let me pause for a second. And I've overcomplicated it because I don't need to actually sum both of those. I just need the sum of that last column because I've already taken into account the other one. So that's funny. That's a mistake that I didn't make when I did this the first time under time pressure, and doing it now without the time pressure, I make that mistake. There you go. Level 6, all correct. And then we go on to level 7. So level 7, we're now going through each team, but we're trying to work out their longest winning streak. So again, I'm going to build on some of the work from before. In fact, I think I can build on all the way up to column M. So let's take all of this and copy that over. And so now we need to establish who was the winning team. So I can't remember exactly how I did this, but let's just work this on the fly. So basically we're saying if, let's say if this, let's go to the original score, if team 1 is greater than team 2, then that means the winning team was team 1. If team 1 is less than team 2, then the winner was the away team or team 2. Otherwise, it must have been a draw because they must be the same. And let's just fill that down. And yep, we get and we see that as per example, we get a string of 3, 12, 13, 14, and 23, 24, and 25 down here. So what I'm going to do is I need to know how quickly they build up a streak of winning games or consecutive games. So I'm going to use scan, and this is an example where I didn't do this in the real thing, and I'll explain in a minute what I did. So I'm going to scan over the winners, and my lambda is going to say basically if let's think over the AV. So if the values, if the current team equals our team, then take the accumulator and add 1. If it's anything other than the team, then we reset to 0. And that's going to give us our streak. So whenever we get there, and again, we see those two streaks. And what I did in the real thing was I just did it where I said I used a consecutives lambda on any of these, and what I didn't take into account is in theory we could have had a streak of say 4 or 5 draws in a row, and I would have picked that up as the longest winning streak. So this lambda makes it so I'm only picking up on a winner, which is technically more accurate. We need to know the match number, so we can just have a sequence of rows of this. It's always the same for every team anyway, so it's always going to be up to 25. So then we need to find what are our streaks. So we know that our longest streak is whatever is the maximum of this, so we have a streak of 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let S be a sequence. I'm going to say filter the match number where the consecutives, and that's not yes, it is a dynamic array, equals the max. So what are the games where we reach the end of a streak? So we reach the end of a streak in 25 and 14. So if I just were to take one of those, I could say, right, let's S as a sequence of how many rows? Well, we want to have a sequence of however was the maximum of our streaks. So this will be 3. So a sequence 3 characters long. We're going to start at the last game of our streak and then go back in steps of -1, because that will give us, so it's games 14, 13, and 12 are where that streak happens. So we now know what the streak is. So we now need to work out what were the scores in those games. I'm just going to expand the formula bar for a second. So now I want to filter the, and it's goals, isn't it? It's just the goals. It's not the actual, see, so our goals are in the team column. So going to filter this where we're going to say exists one of these numbers, so our S within our match numbers. And I'm not 100% certain I've got that exists thing the right way around, but we'll see. I think it might be the wrong way around. I think I need to check whether the value I'm looking at is in S. There we go. So we see goals 17, 11 and 4. And then if we just sum that, we get 32, which is one of the possible options. But now we need to map over however many streaks there might be, because there might be more than 2. So I am going to turn that into a lambda where we've got a streak is our input. And in this case, our input is in being replaced by R4. So that creates just a normal lambda, and I can just test it on 14 and we get the same output. And now I'm going to map over this dynamic array, get rid of that reference at the end of the cell, and we now get 32 and 51, and we're asked to return whatever is the maximum of all of our game scoring streaks. So if we reference that as our data table, we get 51. We'll just go back to the case, and we can see we've got level 7, and we're at 16 minutes time to do the bonuses, and we're pretty close to the time in the real things. How many goals were scored in total during the tournament? So I'm going to go to the scores table. I'm going to say, how am I going to do this? I'm going to sum the text split of this based on the colon delimiter times 1, and that's the number of goals in that game. So 26 in that first game. So I just count that, and our sum is 8259. 8259. How many draws were there in the tournament? So go back to the scores. So we'll go back and we'll say, let's text split. Don't want this to start at the table, so let's text split this based on colon times 1, and then we'll say we'll make this unique based on by column, and it stays the same, and then we will count all of that, and that's 2. But if there's anywhere it's 1, like this third game, that means it's a draw. So we're going to say if A equals 1, then draw. Otherwise, what am I talking about? Not if A equals 1. Talking nonsense. I'm going to say let A equal that. A equal that. And then I'm going to say if A equals 1, then draw. Otherwise, win. And we'll just close that off, drag that down, and if I just go to the bottom here, and then what we want to do is count ifs, or let's just do sum that equals draw, and we'll find there's only 11. So my worry about, oh, there could have been a streak of 5 draws in a row is very unlikely. Which player has the highest market value? So let's go to level 4, make a copy, just so we don't affect our original work. This time, instead of going through just the questions we were given, we're going to go through every single player. So we'll just say equals player dot name. I'm going to copy those as values only, just so we're not dealing with the dynamic array whilst doing a data table. And I should just be able to Alt-DT, and now our value is not in A1, but it's based on B1. And so then we get all of our values, and we want to know the person who has the highest value. So I can just use my largest, smallest lambda. So these are our range of values. Here are our players. Oh, go to the top. And the person at the top there is Kellen West. So we'll copy that over to the case. Determine the team that has the highest combined value for all its 23 players. So we can use the work we've just done on level 4. So what we can do is we can say X lookup the player in player.name and return player.team. So now we've got all the teams. I'm going to get rid of that. And now we can say group by. So I want to group by the teams, and the values is my values, and I'm going to sum that -2, and the team with the highest value is Zamlos, but I think we're actually asked for the amount, so we'll copy that, and we're good to go. And which team has won the World Championship, scored the most tournament points? It says level 7, but actually I think the level 6 work will work, although because I have change something behind the scenes here. My level 6 is not working, so I'm going to have to just quickly fix that. And the reason it's not working is because I added an extra column to the table, so I now need to change my take slightly. So if I take that to -4, we'll get the actual results, and then if I take again, and this time take 3, there we go. I've got rid of that extra column in the table. So what I want to do this time is I want to go through all the teams and see who got the highest score. So I will then get rid of this, and I'm going to say the unique of the player teams, and we get all of those, and then we'll turn this into a data table. We'll take the column input is the team name, and I haven't pointed to my results because I cleared that out as well. And so we want to know who got the most least. So most least of the input. I know it's largest smallest, isn't it? Not largest smallest of my range of values, and my teams. My winning team with 1989 is Walla. I'll go to the case, place that, and we are good to go. And we are at 21 minutes, so that's fairly quick for me. As I said, unique situation for me to be doing this, having got those right during the first attempt. So I was very happy with that. It felt like a very nice case. I'm probably saying that because I'm biased now, but yeah, good case. It was helped by the fact that on some of these levels, so if you had, and again, I've got the same problem there, so I'll just fix that for just purposes. If you had different numbers of games to be looked at, or different numbers of players, or different numbers of skills, then that would have slowed me down quite a bit, because here in some of these places I've got some dynamic arrays, but for example this isn't. I mean, I could possibly turn that into a dynamic array, wouldn't be too much work, but yeah, that would have been something that slowed me down, I'm sure, in real life. And again, this is all gone off because it's the same problem, so this is why it's just as well I didn't do it that way in the live attempt. I did something differently when I was for that bonus one, so I didn't actually end up adding that second column. So yeah, hope you found that helpful. As I say always, this really helps me to understand, even helps you overcome some of the mistakes you might have made. So that whole thing about the consecutives, originally I was just looking for, I've got time to show you, if I just use the consecutives lambda on this array, is that right? Consecutives? No, I didn't use it wasn't actually a dynamic array, so that's why that didn't work. So if I just drag that out over here, I think I got that right. You get the same results, so the 3 there, but it was risky because if they'd played multiple teams in a row and lost them multiple times, even though it looks like they play every team once, or they had multiple draws, I would have theoretically got that wrong, and I might not have realized why I was doing that wrong. So yeah, cool. Right, see you next time.